Yes, welcome to the No State Project. I'm your host, Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted. Glad to be with you here for this December 16th edition of the No State Project, live from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona. A lot of stuff to get to. I have two success stories. I didn't do much. I didn't prep very well for the show. I was more concerned with some video stuff. But two success stories. Trey got a ticket thrown out. I have no details. I'll have to get that during a break, and I'll talk more about that later. But I want to thank everybody for the continued support of the show. Chris and, of course, Matt, Eyal, and Nelson, Bill, and Dan in New Hampshire. I do appreciate that. If you'd like to support the show, you could do so at markstevens.net. And we're here for 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network, the LRN.FM. 4 hours actually all week. We get the 1 hour live commercial-free broadcast on YouTube, which I just posted the HD video last night. So go check that out. But I wanted to, since I mentioned the broadcast, the Wednesday broadcast, I kind of hit the trifecta when it comes to internet hate. And in addition to the hate you get from being an anarchist, and then added to that, which is even worse, being vegan, discussing abortion will get you even more hate. And I'm not saying this is hateful, but this particular comment, and I want to preface, before I read the comment, I just want to make, I want to make it very clear that when I discuss pretty much anything on the show, I'm not making a religious argument either way. Religion has nothing to do with it. I'm not talking about rights, legal rights, because I'm an anarchist. The government is just a group of men and women forcing us to pay them. So, there's that. So I want to make that clear. I'm not coming out, when I talk about abortion, it is absolutely nothing to do with religion, good or bad, it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about legal rights. And I will keep any, and as far as if somebody wants to call the show and talk about it, I believe that any personal issues with it, whether someone in your family has had an abortion or went bad, I don't think that should enter into it. So what may or may not have ever happened in my personal life never enters into the equation. And it shouldn't when we're discussing the morality of it. So somebody had made a comment regarding this and said, I love Mark. That said, nobody has a right, quote, to life. There is only what we can secure to ourselves against others. I never made any reference in the broadcast to a legal right or a right to life. I just said it was immoral to do harm. So another one here is, your body is your own property, Mark. The concept of property establishes who has ultimate right, there's that word, right, who has ultimate right of use of said property. And while I am pro-life, to dictate what a woman can and can't do with her own body makes her a slave. We may not like it or agree with it, but to force our will on her is just as wrong. And your analogies of throwing somebody out of a plane because the owner says to, or shooting a trespasser is a classic non sequitur argument. I'm rather disappointed with your viewpoint on it. Actually, it was an analogy to demonstrate, and this is something I put in the video, that Ayn Rand thought it was a moral right. An abortion was a moral right. So let me take this apart here. One, I don't accept the proposition or the idea that people are property. Nope, because property implies that you did something to get it. You traded it for it. Either you put your labor into it or you traded it. And your body, you didn't put any labor. You were born with that. So, and the idea of trading it, no, I think that's just I can't. I just doesn't fall. I don't see that. While I am pro-life, to dictate what a woman can and can't do with her own body makes her a slave. No one is telling. I didn't say anything. I said abortion is immoral. It is taking life. That the question is the use of force against the fetus an act of self-defense? That's what it boils down to. And my position on abortion is that I would not want that done to me. And as having empathy, I don't want to have that happen to somebody. That's the beginning of the morality in the end. I don't want it happening to me. I don't want it being done to. Thank goodness my parents didn't do that. Or you guys would have nothing to do on this Saturday afternoon. But, so that's where it begins. It's a moral issue there. And when I was discussing that it was immoral to use force that was not for self-defense, that's immoral. That was in no way dictating what a woman can or can't do with her own body. A woman can do whatever she wants to her body as long as it doesn't hurt another person or another body. It's a body inside of her. She has that unique ability to be able to do that. Men can't. I guess if men could carry, the abortion rates would be through the roof. So I'm not forcing my will on anyone. I'm saying I'm making a moral judgment. Now, I know, especially when it comes to non-vegans. Oh, my gosh, don't tell me what I can and can't eat. Well, I'm going to still make a moral judgment, just like we all make moral judgments on based on, on what some other people are doing. Regular listeners to the show are going to make moral judgments on people who pretend to be government. Would you accept from them? Don't you dare tell me how to live my life. Hey, look, I'm not telling you that. What I'm doing is making a moral judgment. What you're doing is wrong. I don't care how you live your life, you libtard asshole. Don't you tell me what Hey, that's the thing. We live in society, communities, and we make moral judgments, especially when those moral judgments may affect us. So, the non sequitur there, if there is one, is I'm not saying, and I'm not dictating what a woman can or can't do with her own body. But I will make a moral judgment, just like most of us will. But I'll do that moral judgment based on the facts. And the fact is, it's not self-defensive force. You're killing another life inside of you. That is immoral. Do no harm is the moral principle. You are doing harm. That doesn't mean I'm going to use force to stop them from doing that. And how that makes her a slave, it's the same thing like, it's a parasite. It's the same species, for goodness sakes. It's not there. Use whatever freaking words you want to justify killing a baby. It's not a person. I love how anarchists, like I can look in a Facebook feed of anarchists talking about it's not a person. It has no legal rights. If you're an anarchist, that shouldn't even enter into the argument. Legal rights. Is it right or is it wrong to use force when it's not for self-defense? Not very difficult. Yeah, I know you kind of have the issue that would be, well, what if the mother's life is at stake? Well, okay, let's answer the question. This is a real moral dilemma. Is the use of force self-defense? There's no winner or loser when the mother's life is at stake. Something bad is going to happen. But when it's for convenience, because it absolutely, no. We may not like it or agree to it, but to force nobody is forcing their will. It's a moral judgment. If you don't like the moral judgment, try to morally justify using force when it's not for self-defense. I'd love to. And again, the issue of abortion, it's a moral one that I take a standpoint that it's immoral to do harm, to deliberately do harm. And that's, do no harm is where it starts. We're anarchists because we believe in the principle of do no harm. And the concept of rulers and having rulers, a violent ruling class, sharply conflicts with that. So it's just being ethically or morally consistent with the principle of do no harm, to treat others the way we want to be treated. So the idea that it's okay to kill a baby or a fetus, however you want, another human life, because it's a trespasser. I quoted Ayn Rand in the last video. I put that up as one of the graphics there. That she believed that women had a moral right. Abortion was a moral right. This is the same woman, okay, whose position on the destruction of the Native American population was morally justified because they allegedly did not hold the Western concept of property, so it was okay to take away the land that they were using. Not really somebody who is morally consistent. Ayn Rand. Never mind the fact that the Cherokee people did adopt Western principles of property. And we know what Andrew Jackson did to them. So, yeah, she got a few things right. I guess when she was quoting Aristotle. Contradictions don't exist. When you are confronted with a contradiction, check your premises. One of them is wrong. And if you think that there's a moral right to use non-self-defensive force against the innocent, check your premises. One of them is wrong. And so we're going to go back. He's been on the show before. We're going to welcome back Carrie. Carrie, welcome back to the No State Project. What do you got for us today?
Hi, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Hey, this is Carrie from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Anyway, in one of my court cases, and God knows we've got a few of them, I filed your the motion for the strike and dismiss and also the request for discovery and the Brady request, and they sent me back an order saying that my request was untimely and they were denied, and the defendant was to comply with the judgment entered, da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, I can't explain to you as to what the judge did, but, boy, I'm sure curious as to where to go from this point.
So there was already a judgment, and then you filed the motion to dismiss?
Well, this court case, okay, comes back, it's CR 2008.
Whoa.
Now, here's the deal. I mean, I'm not certain as to New Mexico legalities of whether or not statutes of limitation runs out after 7 years or not, but here's what happened is my neighbor blocked off 25-foot road easement, and he's kept me from using that.
I'm sorry, Carrie. I got that. But to get back to this, if you're going for you or anyone else in a situation like this, if you already have a judgment, then you don't file it as a motion to dismiss. You got to change the title, and you got to change it somewhat, that because you can always challenge jurisdiction, which is what the motion is based on, lack of evidence proving jurisdiction. But if there's a judgment, you have to restyle it as a motion to vacate the judgment. And that's why he was able to say, and the discovery after a judgment, only a Brady request is relevant after you have a judgment like that. And it has to be criminal, of course. So you just have to retitle the motion and refile it, and you have to put in there that there was a judgment already. Getting a judgment from 2008 or a judgment from any time overturned, whether it's 2008 or 2016, is always going to be extremely difficult. It's it's probably 100 times more difficult to get a judgment thrown out than to stop it from being entered in the first place.
Right, but under those theories, I mean, it took the court no problem after 9 years, 10 years, for them to come after me and go through their paperwork and say, oh, hey, by the way, you owe us $350 from da-da-da-da-da-da, and here we have this other paper. Oh, by the way, you owe us another $350 because I've got two of them. And I had a third one, and years and years ago, I did something, and if they said that I had a wall that I'd built, and if somehow or another I went through the deal where I had an engineer certified the engineering standards to the wall, that we had a motion for dismiss, and then they agreed to it all, and then lo and behold, once I got into this problem 10 years after the fact, and obviously my neighbor's son works for the sheriff's department, all of a sudden I owe them all this money.
Well, you're going to have to go back. Well, of course, if you've got someone on the inside, if he's got such a connection, they're going to find whatever they can use against you, or just charge you something new. So you're going to have to get those done as a motion to, re-edited, to be a motion to vacate the judgment for lack of evidence proving jurisdiction. Because then, if he denies it, then you might be able to appeal that. Chances are you're going to have to file an original petition into the appellate court to get those judgments voided. It's not going to be easy. That's for damn sure.
All right. Here's my problem. I can't write as fast as you talk.
Well, all this is done is all being recorded. So the audio from the for the show will be posted today. So you could just go and right after the show you can get a copy of it.
Really, from markstevens.net?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I apologize. I'll have my son. Listen, my son graduated college valedictorian, and my computer skills are rather lame. My way of communicating you obviously is through my cell phone, and yet you've recognized my phone number so that you know that I've called into the show before. And I did miss last weekend of talking to you. And, you're the first person in my life that I've ever called to a radio talk show or had any of these things. I think when I was in grade school, we wrote some letters off, something, but they were answered. But I've really never had the need. And, I tell you, as a fellow man, I have more respect for you, Mark, than anyone others, simply because you can stand up to these people and ask them questions, and it certainly... I somehow, since the earliest days of my life, from my childhood, I always knew this system was wrong.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're on a live broadcast, and so we are up against a break. We'll be back with the No State Project here on LRN.FM, LRN.FM in just a moment. Don't go away. So he's been on. Hey, regular caller. Haven't heard from in a while. Hope we've got a good news update. Patriot 1 from Florida. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you, Mark. I hope I'm good, too. I want to comment to the last caller. Wherever state he's calling from or having this problem in, he needs to look up the penal code. I mean, he's got to know something about what they're obligated to perform under. And the penal code will list the violations of every government employee there is, pretty much. And then the criminal code. And he's got to learn how to read it as legalese and not as common English. And it sort of goes into the topic of rights. And I look at rights as, instead of saying I have the right to bear arms, I have the authority by myself to bear arms, and it requires no input from anybody else whatsoever. And if there is any input from anybody else whatsoever, then it's not my authority by which I do anything. So a right, I see it as the same thing as authority. By what authority do I live? Well, by mine, without anybody else's input whatsoever. Otherwise, there's no such thing as a right or any authority, and it's the same when they bring charges against you. You would say by what jurisdiction? Where's the jurisdiction? Well, you boil it down to is where is this man's authority to attack me just because he puts on a costume and read a book? It's all about authority and
or the ability to act or not act.
Correct, but like the right to life or the right to an abortion. Well, if I see it as abortion is wrong and immoral, but is it wrong and immoral for me to lock a woman into a cage because she had an abortion? Now, who am I to decide the remainder of her life because she done something that had nothing to do with me?
Well, those are two separate issues, though. Of course.
Well, sort of, because where is my right or my authority to confine a woman that had an abortion. Where do I get that? If I didn't get it from her, then I don't have it.
That's kind of an odd way to look at it. I mean, it's just and why you're bringing incarceration and imprisonment into the discussion. I'm a little confused.
Well, what I'm bringing that in is, how can I imprison somebody? By what authority do I imprison somebody that hasn't caused me harm, or even has caused me harm? It's kind of a dilemma. How do you stop a murderer? Well, you lock him in a cage, I suppose. But the only reason you have the authority to lock him in a cage is because he has trespassed against you. Thereby, it's like if I slap you upside the head without your permission, well, I've just granted you permission to knock me upside the head with a shovel. Because if all things being equal, if I didn't make you an offer, then I can't require you to make me an offer. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense in that if you take out the escalation part, just because if you were to smack me with your hand in the face, for me to then turn around and take a shovel and hit you over the head with it and potentially kill you is kind of an overkill. It's kind of a Michael Bay kind of escalation.
My next swing might be a hammer or a gun. You don't know that. So if I'm willing to hit you, I might be willing just to kill you. You don't know.
Well, I'm justified in using self-defensive force to the extent to neutralize your attack. So, given the circumstances, it depends on what kind of an attack there is. I'm still trying to get and wrap my mind around about the imprisonment part that you're talking about. Are you talking about where society would, it would be a common, let's say, held belief that anybody who commits a murder and an abortion being considered murder should be treated the same as somebody who killed, let's say a suicide bomber, or not a suicide bomber, but a terrorist attack, or just if someone just went and shot up a church, they should be treated the same way. That abortion is on the same level of immorality as taking a gun and blowing someone's head off. And therefore,
it may or may not be the equivalent immorality, but whether the punishment is just. Is another question.
Let's break it down to this.
There's so many
let's say this.
There's so many circumstances. But there's so many circumstances for a woman to get an abortion that it's hard to convict her on her frame of mind or her situation or her fears that cause her to make such a decision, or who's been coaxing her or not coaxing her, to where a madman blowing up a body bomb or whatever you call it, the best bomb, to kill 1,000 people or 200 or whatever. That's a completely different situation than what prompted a woman to get an abortion.
Okay, let's look at it this way. We do consider that crimes against children are considered, like on the TV show, particularly heinous. That going after that, so that the weaker and the less the less defensible, the worse it is. So obviously it is considered far worse, I think, by any rational person. At least for me, it's far worse for an adult man to start kicking and beating up and hurting a 5-year-old child who cannot defend themselves at all, as opposed to an adult man going after another adult man about his size. At least the adult man has some way to defend themselves. So, a fetus has no way of defending itself. It's completely at the mercy of the mother. No, it is not a parasite. Gosh, how did that ever happen that someone is so bloodthirsty and so callous as to say that a baby is a parasite? Maybe I'll have to pull up a definition, on a break and see. But so here, intentionally causing harm and killing innocent life that is at its most defenseless. Is that as bad as somebody who intentionally, shoots to kill another adult? Which one is worse? Or putting in a situation where the adult has some means to defend themselves, but still is ultimately killed. So which one is worse? Killing the innocent baby that had no defense, or the adult that is killed that was able to defend himself but ultimately failed? Which situation is morally is worse? Which one is worse morally? Killing innocent, defenseless, or killing innocent with some defense? We'll find. We'll discuss it more when we get back here. Difficult subject. A lot. It's a very emotional one. So the question I asked my caller, Patriot One, is what carries more moral significance? Killing innocent, defenseless life, or killing innocent life that has some kind of defense available to it? So what do you think about that? Which one is worse? The innocent, indefensible life, or the one that can defend itself? Innocent, but still is able to defend itself to a degree.
Oh, on a question of morality, they're equally wrong. They're equally immoral. But the question is, who was harmed? Was there harm, and can somebody claim a harm or a damage because of the act? Now, a guy walking up to you and putting a bullet in your head, you have a family that can claim a harm or loss. Is that society that is afraid of a guy that's a madman, to where a woman getting an abortion, who can claim a harm or loss? And if the father of that child has no authority whatsoever to say, bring my child to term, then how can anybody else make a claim?
But I don't think that's really good reasoning, that somebody has to be able to make the claim for it to be moral, because then I could just walk up to someone who's homeless who has...
It's not claim whether there's moral. The claim is whether there's harm or damage or loss. The claim is not morality. You can't lock someone up because you believe they're immoral. There's got to be harm, damage, loss, some kind of claim.
I thought you were saying that somebody had to be able to claim the loss or harm for it to be an immoral act.
No, it's immoral regardless.
Okay.
They're equally immoral regardless. But as far as a murder or an abortion, who can claim a harm, injury, or loss because of the act? And if it's for abortion, even the father of the child cannot force the mother to bring that child to term. He has no authority. And if the father has no authority, how can anybody else claim any kind of authority to say anything about it whatsoever?
Well,
but as far as the murder...
If you follow the ridiculous premise that bodies are property and babies can be property, then if you follow that, you say, well, okay, the mother donated an egg, and the father donated sperm. And so the egg and the sperm, it gets fertilized, and you get a zygote. The DNA is both. So wouldn't the father, if we're following this property line of reasoning, wouldn't the father have 50% property right to the baby? Wouldn't he have some say as a property owner as to whether the property was going to be destroyed or not?
He should.
But people think it's just because it's the only one who has a choice in the matter is the woman, and it's not her body. Again, it still comes down to, is the use of force morally justified? And I believe that if it's self-defense, it is morally justified. But they're not saying it. So somebody had a question. I don't know if this is to you. If someone murders my neighbor in my presence, I have no recourse unless the murderer tries to kill me. I don't think if someone's committing a murder right there, I think they don't have to be hurting us personally to knock them down and use defensive force against them.
Well, no, you would have the right or authority to defend your neighbor and yourself.
Sure. Self-defensive force.
I mean, if you can't defend your neighbor from a beating or anything else, God, then we are in evolution, and there are no rules, and anybody can kill anybody for any reason they want, and nobody can stop anybody for doing it.
I wouldn't say that was evolution.
It's like
I wouldn't say that was evolution, but now it turns on if we are morally justified in using defensive force to stop someone from killing our neighbor, is it then morally justified to use defensive force to stop a woman going to a doctor or having a doctor perform an abortion?
Not if you're not the father.
Didn't ask. Wait. We just established, and I think we're in agreement, that if your neighbor is in danger, he's in imminent mortal danger, someone is trying to end his life, and it's morally justified for us to use self-defensive force to stop them from taking innocent life. Is it morally justified then, knowing that a woman is going to take an innocent life, she's going to a doctor to have a doctor take an innocent life, is it morally justified to stop the taking of that innocent life? Is it morally justified?
Well, I look at it this way. If you see your neighbor standing there and you can see your neighbor doing this thing, you can step in to help. If you see a woman laying out in the yard ready to perform an abortion, I suppose you could approach her and stop her. But can you enter into someone else's private property, the doctor's office, and inflict your will, whatever that is, upon someone else? And I don't think you can.
Well, can you, if your neighbor is screaming, or that you know that this guy is coming to kill your neighbor and he's in the house, okay, because you know that the intent of the person who entered the house is to kill them, can you break into your neighbor's house to help them? Is it morally justified to break into your neighbor's house to save their life?
Yes.
Okay.
But is the woman in the doctor's office screaming, "Help me, help me, help me"? No.
Well, but I think the analogy, it may still stand. You know that someone is in mortal danger, whether they're screaming or not. How you're alerted to that fact, I don't think bears, on the moral question. You know you have evidence that they are in mortal danger.
Let me throw this at you. So, say it is proper for someone to defend the innocent life of the unborn child from abortion. What are they authorized to do?
That's why we talk about defensive force, and that's why we're talking,
Are they allowed to throw her in a cage and lock her up and throw her baloney straps for 20 years? I mean, what can I do to this woman to make it right? There's nothing whatsoever that I can do to help that woman.
And you may not. It may,
or that child.
And you may not be able to help your neighbor.
Let me go on. If I do and am successful in forcing that woman to bring that baby to term, and she puts the baby out on the face of the earth, am I now responsible for the life of that baby and make sure it lives, or can I force her to feed that child and put it to school and clothe it?
Well, again, self-defensive force is the only morally justified.
Are
you Are you using Are you using self-defensive force against the woman? Yes or no? That's the question. No. So it's not morally justified. So if the woman's not interested or capable of taking care of the child, then there are plenty of other people that are able and willing to take care of the child.
No, Mark. No. I disagree. If I force that woman to bring that baby to term, and she doesn't want that baby, and I forced her to bring it in, that baby is now my responsibility. Because if I got the moral authority to force her to have that baby, then I have the moral authority and the obligation to raise that baby.
Or provide...
I can't just step in and say, no, I can't just step in and say, woman, you're going to have this baby and you're going to feed it and you're going to clothe it because I stopped you from aborting it. No, if I step in and force her to bring that in, not only am I obligated to raise that baby, I'm obligated to raise that woman. Because I have no authority whatsoever to step into her life for any reason unless she's causing me harm. And by her having an abortion, she's not causing me any harm, morally or not, whether, no matter whose God I believe in. But if I'm starting and got some kind of authority to make her my slave, my property, and I can order her how to live her life, by God, I'm obligated to sustain her life. Just like when I bring my son into the world, I'm obligated till the day he dies, or if I die first, to make sure he's okay until he's 90 years old if I'm still alive.
Unless you're a Murray Rothbard, unless you follow Murray Rothbard.
Well,
I got to put you on hold because we're up against a break. I'm going to bring back Patriot One. Yeah, we get into some sticky issues here. Things are not always as cut and dry as we'd like them to be because, yeah, what is the responsibility for somebody if somebody was to use force and not allow someone to get an abortion? What is their responsibility to the child if the mother and father don't want the child? It still follows that it's still that if somebody does the saving is not able to take care of the child, then there are plenty of other people that can step in that they can then give the child to be able to take care of and raise.
The woman has the ability to seek that out after she's pregnant and decides she doesn't want the child. She has the ability to find adoptive care or some alternative. That for a stranger to force himself and his alleged morals on anybody else is a trespass, as far as I'm concerned. Like Senator Spooner would say, by what authority do you act upon me? It has nothing to do with you. Well, keep your hands off. Let me be.
Well, that's why we did it from the example that if your neighbor or someone you know or even someone you don't know is in mortal danger, someone you have evidence, solid evidence, so that someone's life is in danger, then you can defend them. It's defensive force, which is morally justified. That's why we took the direction, the conversation in that direction. No one is suggesting that you go out there and use physical violence or force to stop people. We're just talking about the morality of it. Is it morally justified? Not that, just like...
Well, think about it like this. If a guy's about to murder or beat to death your neighbor, and you clobber him on the head with a shovel to stop him, well, a woman's going to get an abortion. Do you clobber her on the head to stop her? I mean, it's just so... the morality of the act, either way, is immoral or unkind.
Well, I think what you're looking at, though, is like I mentioned before, the force used, the defensive force used, has to be enough just to neutralize the attack. So obviously using a shovel in all situations is not morally justified.
True.
So, and I did want to point out because...
How do you stop the woman?
Again, that's a difficult. That's a very. It might not be something that you can physically stop. You might not be able to do that. But I want to just remind people of the analogy that I've used before. That even though we can show evidence that people called government are just they're criminals. They force people to pay them, and just like Robert Diab said, the law professor up in Canada said a couple of years ago, it is a jurisdiction or their authority is a blunt assertion of power. It's not based on argument and it is not based on evidence. So in that situation, the moral question that I should have posed to him but didn't get a chance to is, since it is just a blunt assertion of power, you'd be morally justified in using defensive force to stop an agent, let's say an IRS agent or a police officer. That doesn't mean that we're saying we're going to go out and do that, because it's, you have to look at the context of everything. I mean, going Carl Drake on a daily basis is not going to end well. Not a smart thing.
If the IRS agent is reaching into your pocket, yes, you can knock them down and snap their neck. But if they're seizing your bank account, then you got to go by other means to stop that. You can't attack them.
I don't think you need to snap his neck. But I get the point. See, we're just talking about the moral implications. Would it be morally justified to stop somebody? Not that we're going to do it. Would it be morally justified to stop somebody from killing innocent life? And yeah, it is morally justified. It's just with the abortion issue, it's always couched in these terms to try to minimize or make it like it's not even a life at all, which is Look, to me, it's a simple thing. Either you respect life or you don't. And that's why we say the only time it's necessary to take life is to preserve your own. No,
Correct.
And that's usually not the case with abortion. Is done overwhelmingly for convenience.
Yes, that is true, and it is morally corrupt. But then again, is it moral for the state to throw a woman in a cage because she had an abortion? And I don't think that's moral either.
Well,
the dilemma is between the woman and her creator.
Well, we're not going to
heart and soul.
Okay, but we're not. Remember, with the discussion, we're not going to inject any kind of religious sentiments. Well, let me ask you this: is it moral for people called government to put someone like Ted Bundy, where the evidence is unquestionable, they are an immediate and constant threat to the people, the public, and he killed and will kill again? Is it moral to put him in jail?
Yes. It is moral to stop a madman.
Right. So is it moral to put someone in jail where the evidence is overwhelming that they've only killed one person and there's no evidence they're going to kill again?
Well, it depends on if you're talking abortion or a simple murder.
Well, I'll get to that. If someone committed a premeditated act of murder and the evidence is overwhelming, they did it, it's on video, they did it, there's no question, he did it. Is it moral to separate him from society and put him in jail or prison?
I believe it is.
Then why, if a woman has intentionally taken a human life, intentionally took an innocent human life, why is it then not moral to put them in the same prison?
Because there's no claim of harm or loss or damage by any other party, by anybody else.
You're assuming
if I murdered my neighbor, his family has a claim of harm, damage, and loss because of my act.
But what if your neighbor had no friends? He was a recluse. He had no friends. He had no family. And he'd never even spoken to you.
But you can't, the punishment can't be the same either way. There's different conditions. Like I said, the mindset of the woman, who convinced her, who coaxed her, who raped her.
Well, that it wasn't a question.
So many different.
We're talking about, but I should have put in there that it's an innocent life, and it was an abortion of convenience.
Yes, that's true, but
the thing is,
Mark, I can't bring my heart to lock a woman in a cage because she can't handle life.
Well, I didn't ask you that.
That's different than somebody premeditating to murder somebody.
But I didn't ask you that. I'm asking if it's morally justified. You said it wasn't, and I'm asking you why it's not morally justified. When it's morally justified to put someone in jail for murder, an adult, and there's beyond doubt that he did it. It's morally justified to put him in prison. But a woman who, and I'm not saying we want to do it, I'm just talking about the moral implications.
I would suppose it would be the intent.
The intent.
The intent of the perpetrator.
It was the intent was to take, the intent is to commit an act that will deprive or take an innocent life. That is the intent. The intent is, I'm going to take an innocent life. That's the intent. I think that's the only intent that's relevant.
I don't believe a woman, and maybe I could be wrong, but I don't believe a woman says, I'm pregnant, I don't, I think there's a whole lot more of thought that goes into that process, because the woman knows she has to kill it to get rid of it.
That's true.
It's a terrible, God, I'm glad I don't have to think about that. Of course, I would have the baby anyway. But.
Glad to be with you here. We're talking ethics today, morality, and more specifically how it relates to abortion, and always a very decisive issue. And there's no it's not a matter of, well, they're going to do it anyway, so don't, just throw your hands up. And, I think it's a matter of changing. It's a matter of education. It's just like trying, welcome back, Patriot One. I think it's a matter of discussing it like this and asking people why they believe the way they believe. It's the same as when we're talking about anarchy, when we're talking with people who are statists. Instead of just throwing out libtard, Republican cuck faggot and all these other things, just get into a discussion on why people believe what they believe and asking them questions. I know there was something recently posted on Facebook. Well, how do you do it? You have to actually listen to people and find out why they believe what they believe, and then ask them some questions to maybe bring out some contradictions. So I don't, again, I'm not saying that we should use physical force to stop people from getting abortions, and just like I'm not suggesting that people also use physical force against farmers, or more specifically slaughterhouses, to stop them from slaughtering animals needlessly. We're just talking about the morality of it, and so bringing people over, and that's what happened to me on this broadcast a couple years ago, thanks to EOL, that talking about the ethics or the morality of eating meat and seeing the contradictions for myself during a live broadcast is what changed my mind and then changed how I live my life. And so that's what why we're talking about this. It's not engaging a discussion and then recommending that people go out and use physical force, or recommend that women actually get incarcerated for abortions. I'm not saying that. I don't think so. But we're just talking about the moral implications of the abortion. No.
Correct, and it is immoral. But a solution is kindness and programs, and if government wasn't funding Planned Parenthood by the billions of dollars, other organizations would actually have the ability to assist and help the mother out of an unpleasant situation.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really helps is to keep it strictly a secular, moral issue, and don't try to, and go based on principles that we all commonly hold anyway, of do no harm. We don't have to inject any kind of religion. We don't have to go and take some foreign philosophy. We just have to take a basic principle of do no harm that we all understand. We don't want it being done to us. We don't want to get hurt. So to be consistent, we apply that to others. And so starting at that rational point of agreement, and then bringing from there, tell me why you believe then it's so. So if you believe in the principle of do no harm, and that's why you're an anarchist or whatever, then is that consistent with your belief in abortion? And if you think so, then please explain to me how the principle of do no, how is abortion, how is that consistent with the principle of do no harm? Put the burden on them to explain why they believe the way they believe. And then actually listen to what they're saying, instead of being caught up in this trap of, and I'm guilty of this myself on the show, this very show today, of just trying to get your point across. Listen and then respond to what they're actually saying.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that very much. Got to be dialogue without. It's hard to do dialogue without prejudice, because everyone is prejudiced one way or another on every topic. But at least be open to dialogue, and hopefully you're dealing with true and honest people, which is what we didn't have with Hamilton and the founders. They were scoundrels and liars and thieves through the whole thing. So it's just hard to. You look at the FBI hearings today, as far as Trump and Clinton and everything else, how the FBI were the actual perpetrators of every crime that took place.
Well, I don't know if it's fair to say that the FBI was not behind the emails those were personal emails of Trump Jr. and I forget all the names. So they
were behind the concealing and the cover up of the crimes of Clinton and Obama and everyone that was in office at that time, with all their dealings in the election fraud and all that, and that's why I say with with the abortion issue, who actually has any authority to inflict a punishment on the woman except for the father of the child? And if the father has no authority whatsoever, then nobody has the authority to say anything as far as I'm concerned. If the father had some kind of authority, then yes, there could be a punishment or something because he could claim a loss or a harm. But when the actual people involved are eliminated from the discussion or the remedy or anything like that, then nobody should be allowed to step in. That's how I look at that.
I got to take issue with that because that's similar to what the mafia and the Yakuza and whatnot do, especially the Mexican drug gangs. They just eliminate, what was that line from the Untouchables? I want him dead. I want his house burned to the ground. He wants his family dead. The fact that something barbarous has happened in the community, even if somebody doesn't have a direct familial connection or a friendly connection to them, does not make the act less barbaric. And honestly, I think we do have common interest of not having such horrible, immoral acts being done in the community and accepted. So at the very least, they could be roundly, rejected by a vocal community. If anything, I'm not saying prison, no, but in a sense, there should be. Look, there's so many things that people get shamed for. A moral judgment on something like taking an innocent life, no, you don't get a free pass on that. So that's one of the things that can be done. So we're almost out of time for this segment, and we've got a full...
Well, enjoy, and thanks for the time. And
I'm going to preface this. He's been on before, a very critic of mine, and thinks that I use the mute button too much. The only time I will use the mute button for ICBM Catcher's Call is like I do for everybody when I am going to a break. So, without further ado, I'm supposed to be prepared to be hammered by him. So, welcome back to the show, ICBM. It has been a while.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What do you got for me today?
Boy, I'm a little stunned. I'm actually stunned because as I started listening to this program, this particular edition, it seems like we might actually be in agreement on something, which I don't know what to say. The whole abortion thing, I guess I'm on your side on this one. I didn't know that your no state way of thinking went into abortion, but you've been doing that lately, I guess? I've
lately just spoken about it. It's been a while since it's come up, but I've mentioned it for years now, that the principle of do no harm is how I govern my life and why I'm an anarchist. And that extends to that, to be logically and morally consistent. Yeah, you have to be against abortion.
Yeah, I can't disagree. But it is interesting you bring up the do no harm thing, because that's actually part of why I'm calling today. What evidence do you rely on to prove that do no harm applies to you or anybody else?
It's a principle that we all tend to agree on because we don't want to be harmed. I know in my own life, speaking for myself, I don't want to be harmed. And how does that apply to you? I have a natural instinct, I guess, or a drive to sustain my own life and to continue my own life. So if you or somebody else gets in the way and is trying to take my life, I'm going to do whatever is physically possible to neutralize the attack. And I extend that courtesy to everybody else. No,
I understand what you just said, but I'd like you to please answer the question. What evidence do you rely on to prove that that edict, or whatever you want to call it, applies to anyone? What evidence?
I thought I answered. I don't have any evidence.
Aha. That's what I thought. Your entire central question, what evidence do you rely on to prove the Constitution, all that kind of stuff, your central question, which is really just a statement cloaked as a question, is exactly the same thing that there is no evidence. There's no evidence for your edict of do no harm either. So why is one more applicable than another? Yeah, there's no evidence of either.
Because are you talking about as far as the Constitution and the laws that come from that, political laws?
Yeah, right. I guess there is no evidence for either one, do no harm or theft, or whatever you want to call it. There is no evidence that any law applies to anyone, anywhere, at any time, because a law is nothing but an idea or a concept. You can't have proof or evidence of an idea or a concept. So the logical conclusion to your entire No State Act is no laws apply to anyone, anywhere. So where do you go from there? Where do you go from that logical conclusion? Because according to you and everybody in your little clique there, no laws apply to anyone, anywhere, except this magical do no harm one, I guess.
Hey, where do you go from there? Let me just ask you real quick. Have I been disrespectful to you on this call?
No, you have not.
Then why are you going to take a shot at me and the people who listen to this show? Like, let's have a rational adult conversation, and you can leave things out like saying I'm putting on an act, and you can leave out a click. You don't have to put down me or the audience.
I don't believe that's disrespectful. I think that what you're doing is an act. And only because I don't think you really believe what you say. You're an intelligent guy, and I think your whole thing is just an act to promote your business, which is how to evade taxes. Pretty much, it's a tax evasion scheme, or not even a scheme. It's just a how to avoid taxes, and you reel people in that think that you're really going to help them when you're obviously not. You fail most of the time. I mean, the vast majority of the time you fail. So that's not disrespectful. I think that what you do is an act, and I believe that the people, the no state way of thinking is a tiny clique. That's not disrespectful.
You don't think it's disrespectful to accuse me of being disingenuous just to take money from people?
It's not disrespectful. It's my point of view.
Do you have any evidence that I'm putting on an act?
No, I don't. It's my opinion.
Okay. Well, why don't you, before you make such a sweeping accusation against me, because you're basically calling me a criminal, before you do that, if you want to be respectful, okay, then have some proof before you make such a statement about me. I have no problem with people accusing me of being a crook, but they have to have some evidence to back it up. Okay, so we got a record. You don't have any evidence of that.
No, I don't. It's an opinion. It's an opinion.
Okay, but it's an opinion that you're saying that I'm a crook, and you're speculating that I'm a crook.
Don't put words in my mouth. I never said you were a crook. I have said you're a snake oil salesman. I think you're a harmless kind of barnacle on society. You have your own way of looking at things, but let's be clear. Your way of looking at things is only an opinion. It's only an opinion. It's your view of widely accepted and commonly understood things, which in this case really is a state and everything that comes from it. It's your opinion. And the reason that you feel you're behind this impenetrable wall of logic is because there can be you can't prove an opinion right or wrong. That's why no one can say you Stevens, you're wrong. No one can say that because it's how you look at the Constitution, the entire concept of law. So that's why no one can prove you wrong, show you evidence, because it's an opinion.
No, that's not true. If you have an opinion that I am acting and I don't believe what I'm saying and I'm scheming to take people's money and do more harm than good, that opinion can be based on evidence. You can have an opinion that it can be shown to be based on evidence and is true. So the idea that an opinion can't be proven wrong, I don't think that's accurate. Just like, and I think, we are up against the break. So I'm only muting you because we're going up against the break. I do that for everybody. And ICBM is trying to hammer me on this. He's trying to compare the principle, the moral principle of do no harm, which I don't have any evidence applies to anybody, to political laws. And we'll continue that discussion on the other side. Let me see if I want to make sure I have your position correct. You do agree that there's no evidence proving that political laws apply to everybody?
Correct.
And you think it's the same as the ethical principle of do no harm? You think that it's the same thing?
No. I mean, I use it as comparison because, as I said before, there is no evidence that any rule applies to anybody. Any rule, any law, any statute, anything along those lines is made up by man, by people. Before, at the beginning of time, or wherever you want to go back to, before there was an organized society, obviously it was anarchy. There was no ruling class. There were no rulers or anything like that. And we obviously realized that didn't work anymore, and we came up with these things called laws and governments and so forth. Somewhere along the line, we tried anarchy. It doesn't work because it's just nonsense when you look at a larger society.
Archaeologists would disagree with you, and Schopenhauer is famous for his works in that every government has been one of conquest, not because the people agree that this would be a good thing. Do you have any historical examples of a government that was imposed on or that came into existence by the voluntary actions of the community?
Well, it seems like our government seems to be a pretty good example of that. There was a situation that existed, rule under the crown, that we as a nascent nation didn't like, and we threw off that government and replaced it with another. But we're talking about the concept of government at all, the concept of what you call a ruling class. I mean, just like you said, every government came into being by conquest. That's the way of the world. That's just how it is. If you're going to try to eliminate that aspect of society, well, why don't we just eliminate poverty and hunger and sickness? Why don't we just do that too?
But ICBM, you just contradicted yourself. You started out saying that we decided, somewhere along the line, we decided this was nonsense. So now you're contradicting yourself. So you agree that it's by conquest. And the U.S. government, the evidence is stacked against that it was also by conquest. In fact, after they did have a period of anarchy, let's say, for example, in Massachusetts, and this we stuff, there were people called loyalists. There were many in this so-called nation that were loyalists. So your generalizations are off the charts today. But after a short period of anarchy in 1774 to 1775, the Americans took up the taxing districts, the old colonial taxing districts, and started doing the same thing. They started collecting it at the barrel of a gun also. So there's no historical precedent whatsoever. There's no historical example that you can give me where it was not by conquest. So to be consistent here, if every single government has been imposed by conquest, please tell me why you believe that not having a ruling class by conquest is nonsense.
You broke up a little bit there, but why is not having a government imposed by conquest. I'm sorry, I missed the rest of that.
Why do you believe that that's nonsense? Because you're saying that anarchy, not having a ruling class or a government, is nonsense. So why do you believe that not having a government is nonsense?
Well, this is a perfect segue into what I hope you will attempt to try to spend a lot more time on, because I'd like to see you undo yourself. And, you know, I've been hammering you all around the internet with this basic premise is, let's say that, and I asked you this before and you avoided this, but I'm going to ask it again. Let's say that 5 years ago, the United States of America, the people, we decided to dissolve our government and do exactly what you all want. We're going to move to, I don't even know what to call it, anarchist society, anarchist whatever. You guys won. We suddenly saw the light and came around to your way of thinking. So tell us, Stevens, tell us, a wise one, tell us what happens after that. Do we dissolve government completely? Do we have a police force? Do we have any laws? If so, who makes them? Who enforces them? What happens after your cockamamie idea actually comes into being in reality? Tell us.
Now, is it possible for us to have a conversation without you taking personal shots at me?
All right.
No, look, I can joke around with the best of them, but you are not coming at this from a friendly engagement, okay? And if I'm being respectful to you, and I don't think I've taken any shots at you, why don't you extend me?
Buddy.
Why don't you extend? Wait,
buddy. This is friendly.
This is friendly?
Sure, we're New Yorkers, man. This is how we talk. Okay, whatever you say. Anyway,
all right, but you don't have to. Look, you can ask.
I apologize for any shots I apologize for any shots I took. Could you please answer the question?
Please answer the question. I've answered this question 1,000 times on the show. I don't know why you think I'm avoiding this. It's not the
you asked the question. Where's the evidence 1,000 times? Why can't you answer this one 1,001? Go ahead.
I'm going to answer you. I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer.
Let's see you. Okay, go ahead. I just want to see a show devoted to this, or maybe more than just your answer right now. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, before I answer again, the show is to help people, and I only have 4 hours a week. So if I have callers where people want to discuss court situations, that is what we talk about. It turned into a caller-driven show. Okay, and so we talked about. Hey, there was someone on the line, the infamous Wit. I'm sure he wanted to talk about abortion, but he dropped off for some reason, so that you got the next one. But the question, to answer the question, is things would function a lot similar to the way they are now. The problem that we have as anarchists are not the services that you mentioned, in, let's say, infrastructure. You mentioned police specifically. It's not that particular. It's not that we don't like protection services. We don't like the manner in which they are paid. And so the only thing we really want to see change is the manner in which they're paid. So, of course, you're still going to have police and protection services. Of course, you're going to have internet. Of course, you're going to have water and electricity and basic services and roads. The difference is the manner in which they're paid. They're not going to be paid by use of force and a prison system.
Well, we've had this discussion before, and I still say that in reality, it's great to say that right now, but in reality, your move to a voluntary society, it's impractical. It would never work. Anyone can see that, and the proof of that, and you could say it's not proof, but I think the proof of that is that it doesn't exist anywhere. And if it does, it's only a small band of people. You tend to bring up obscure examples. I think one time we were talking and you said something about an anarchist society that existed briefly either before or right after the revolution. Maybe just was what you were referring to in Massachusetts. But it doesn't exist on a large scale because it doesn't work. There's always going to be. Simple question is,
well,
what if I don't want to volunteer?
Okay, but let's address this. You just mentioned that we've spoken about this before, and yet you say that I've dodged the question, and I have answered the question. So the more accurate to say is I'm not dodging the question. You're not satisfied with my answer. So let's try to flesh this out so that I can give an answer here live on the air that you may at least accept as responsive. You may not agree with it, but at least we can agree as adults that it's responsive. Okay?
Sure, and I would hope that going forward that you would agree when a judge, for instance, overrules your objection, your myriad of objections. I've heard you before. You object to the same thing over and over again. Why is it different for you?
Well, hold on just a moment. I want to bring back ICBM catcher, and he's hammering me. Well, he's trying to hammer me on my positions, my act. And you had mentioned before the break that I object incessantly. And hey, I do. I object about everything. Are you trying to draw an analogy between that and you asking me to answer a question more than once?
I'm not sure that characterizes it right. I'm just noting that there's a lot of repetition, maybe in both of our rhetoric, but I'm just saying I've heard you make the claim or whatever. Oh, I'm sorry. Ask the question: what evidence do you rely on? Thousands of times, and why is it that you can ask the same question over and over again when it's been asked and answered many times? I'm just saying. I hear you repeat yourself quite a bit, so. That was my only point there.
Okay. Well, a question I have here is and we may have covered this before. Would you consider it wrong or immoral to force strangers to give you money?
Of course it is.
Okay.
If that's now, I know where you're going with this. You got a kind of a way of doing this. If that's what were happening, yes, that's correct. But the judicial system is not what you just described. It's not just, as you put, I think, strangers forcing us to give them money.
No, it's forcing strangers to give you money.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe I misspoke. Whatever you just said. Correct.
Yeah. Well, isn't that how government gets their money? Don't they just force strangers in the community to give them money?
It's not that simple. You use oversimplification as one of your tools, and it's incorrect. It's not that way. This is a system, for better or for worse. It's a system that's in place. It's been in place, and you and everybody else are well aware of it. It's in place. It's there. You know the rules. You know how it works. And it just is what it is. There's no evidence for it. The only thing that makes it a system that we all must follow is the aspect of enforcement. Without enforcement, the barrel of the gun, as you put it, all this stuff would just be suggestion. We could do whatever we want, and each person would make their own individual decisions as to what's right and wrong. And I think anyone would agree that would lead to anarchy quickly afterwards, followed by chaos.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there because, first of all, when there's no government, people know right from wrong. They usually confuse it, though, with legal and illegal. But people do understand the principle.
May I? Go ahead.
I was trying to respond to you.
I know.
I know. It's more important to make your point than to hear me out.
Go ahead.
I will give you the floor.
Now, okay. I just feel I got to stop you when you say you just said people know right from wrong, or did you say most people? Well, that's not what government laws are about. It's about the people that don't know right from wrong. It's about controlling those people. Unfortunately, they're the minority, but those are the people. Look, if everybody knew right from wrong, we wouldn't need government. We wouldn't need anything. We wouldn't need police. We'd all, live happily ever after. But then you have to also go to the degree of, well, who's to say what's right and wrong? What if it's right for me and not for you? If nothing else, government is a standard by which we all live. Like it or not, it's a standard that everyone's supposed to be held to. Sorry if I interrupted.
Well, you already agreed that it was by conquest.
Yes.
So it's not a standard which we all live by. We don't all live by conquest. If we were to do things, if we were to do things,
right.
If we were to do things the way they do it and forced strangers to give us money and do things by conquest, that would be immoral. We would be criminals. So, would you prefer? Would it be more? How do I phrase this right? Would it be so? Would you prefer that it was not by conquest and that payments for their services were not done under threat, duress, and coercion?
I can't say that. I kind of like the survival of the fittest element that we have. I don't want everyone to be equal. I don't want people that aren't as intelligent or capable as me to have the same things that I can have. I don't expect the same things that someone that is smarter or faster or luckier than me. I don't expect those rewards. I like people being superior to others in some way, in performance mostly. I like that.
That's not what I asked you, though.
Okay, what did you ask me?
I'm asking you, would you think it would be better that people weren't forced to pay and that it wasn't by conquest?
It would be nicer. It would be more pleasant. But what about the people that would decide, I don't want to pay. There's no reason I should because I'm still going to get the benefits.
So we'll address that. That's called the free rider program. We understand that. And most rational adults who are in business understand and can still function and thrive despite that. But it would be nicer and it would be more pleasant. Do you think that that is nonsense? That given that you agree that it's immoral to force strangers to give you money, you agree that it's by conquest, and then you agree that it would be nicer and more pleasant if it was voluntary payments and it wasn't by conquest. So does that sound like nonsense to you?
Of course it is, because just things aren't nice and pleasant. Things are the way they are. Sometimes things are unpleasant, and sometimes people have to be kept in line. Sometimes people that would do harm need to be kept in line. But my question, or my general question is, how do you call anarchy anything but a different form of what we have now, as you said a few moments ago? Because I think there was a very telling remark on your part.
Okay.
Because I think that naturally, things would pretty much evolve to what they are now. There would be people that call the shots. They're not always the same people. So that position changes. I mean, you like to characterize government as rulers. Rulers don't get voted in and out. Now you can also say that our elections are a farce, which I would probably have to agree with. But no system is perfect. So I think that, nicer and pleasanter, sure, but that's nirvana. That doesn't exist.
You do understand that the Holy Roman Emperor was voted into office, right? You do understand that. You understand the historical context that the Holy Roman Emperor, who was basically like the Tsar of Germania, you do know he was elected. Not by the people, but by the barons and the dukes and whatnot. But he was voted in.
Right. That's what I was that's what I was going to say.
So don't
not by constituency, but by by an elitist.
Yeah, but you said rulers aren't voted in. So, but okay. So that's just, there's so much, and oh man, I'm up against the damn break again. All right, I got to mute you up. Just hold on. We'll finish in the next segment. My name is Marc Stevens. You listen to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, and we're talking about anarchy and ICBM. Catcher thinks He thinks it's nonsense to think that you can have a society without a violent conquest and a prison system to force people to pay for services. He thinks it's nonsense, but we'll address that when we get back. That I do agree that social change takes a long time. It was in the Declaration of Independence that went a long train of abuses and blah, blah. I get that, but once the change has taken place, the same inertia or the same resistance that kept the idea or the paradigm in place will, once it's changed, that same will keep the new one in place. So a historical example, because I'm responding to when you said it was naturally, it would naturally go back to an act of conquest. The different, and it might be, there might actually be a free voluntary society could be, conquered. I get that. But as far as the people accepting the change, see, once you get to the voluntary society or anarchist society, because enough people understand that, unlike you, they don't like something that's immoral. They're not going to just be okay with something that's immoral. So a historical example is in the it's been over 200 years since the American population accepted the political notion of kings. They may accept it over there in England for them, but for the United States, they will never accept the concept of a king ever again. So it's very difficult to change people's minds. So here they've not been able to naturally go back to a monarchy, even though there's a lot of people, even so-called anarchists, who believe that monarchy is the best way to go. So I just want to, in the time we have left here, I just want to give you a chance to just kind of lay out, again, where am I getting something wrong? What am I saying on my show that's dead wrong?
Well, you can't say anything you say is dead wrong, because everything you say is based on your view of accepted behaviors, norms, law, whatever you want to call it. It's your view of things. So you can't say you're wrong. Where I take exception to you and what you're doing is you're encouraging people, and your thing is really taxes. It really is mostly taxes. I mean, is that fair to say? No. Okay. Well, what I hear most on your videos is it has to do with taxes. You throw in a smidgen of getting out of speeding or getting out of traffic tickets and whatnot, but it's mostly about taxes. I think that you encourage people to try to figure out a way to not pay their taxes by telling them that they don't owe taxes in the first place. Wow, that sounds wonderful. Gee, too bad it's not true.
Well, wait a minute.
And the thing is...
Wait a minute. Wait, you said it's by conquest and that there's no evidence these laws apply. So under what basis are you saying that people do owe taxes?
They're aware of the system that's in place where they live. They're aware of it. And by the time you're, 13, 14 years old, you kind of know what's going on. They're aware of the system. They're aware that taxes are taxes. They are what they are. Whether it's right or wrong is a different question. But everyone's aware of how things work in the United States and virtually every other country. Taxes are taxes. Taxes have been around since, who knows how long. In a sense, you could say that taxes are extorted from people. If you want, you could say that. That's not too far off the mark. But you could just as easily say that taxes are a necessary evil for a society to function. It's in how you look at it. And if you keep, you like to talk about conquest and how evil it is and everything. Conquest, even violence, is as much a part of the human behavior as love or anything else. It just is a part of who we are. It is, whether we like it or not. And for you, your position would change the entire human experience, history, and future. And it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense because it will never happen. It can't ever happen because of just the nature of people and societies. Is
it nonsense from a theoretical standpoint or nonsense from a practical standpoint, or both?
Oh, absolutely practical. That's why I keep hammering you on, tell us how it's going to work after you win. Tell us how it's going to work after. Just take something as simple as building codes. Just something just out of the air, building codes. Let's say you want to build some monstrosity, stupid-looking thing on your property, and nobody in your neighborhood likes it. Who are they in your society? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what to call it. In anarchy, who is the whole rest of the world, let alone just your neighborhood? Who are they to tell you can't build that monstrosity on your property?
They may not.
In your world, you can do whatever you want.
They may not have any recourse. It depends on the context, and it depends on the context. So you do agree from a theoretical standpoint that it's not nonsense.
Man, you're breaking up there.
From a theoretical standpoint, wait. From a theoretical standpoint, anarchy is not nonsense.
No. I said practical.
Okay.
Practical. Practically, anarchy is nonsense in that it's already. It's a very simple question I'll ask you. If it's not, then why do we not live in anarchy now?
Because there is a violent organization that controls each continent by conquest, and that's the main reason. Because we're being controlled by conquest. You do it or you go to jail. And I want to address this what you're saying, because I'm almost out of time. And we've given you an hour, so you can't complain that way. My family is originally from Carini, Sicily. And they grew up there with an organization that ruled by conquest also. They're called the Black Hand or the Camorra.
Well,
let me finish. Let me finish.
Myself, just so you know.
Let me finish. You said you were Italian or Sicilian?
I'm Sicilian, both sides, so I could be made as well as you.
Oh no, I'm half Irish, so I can't be made. I'm like,
sorry,
but you know, the Randazzos, the Gargaglianos, the Pecoreros, the Armetas, the Balsamos. That's my familia, familia, and my Gargaglianos had to leave Carini because they witnessed a Black Hand hit. So just because they've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and everyone knows you just pay the tribute or you die, doesn't make it right and doesn't mean you don't work towards eliminating such a threat. So I have about 15 seconds left. I want to give you the last.
15 seconds. Well, I say that you use the logical fallacy of equivocation. You use it all the time. I don't know what to say in 15 seconds, but I'm telling you right now that what you say is an act to boost your business. I can't believe that you really believe what you say.
Well, we're off air, and if you think it's an act, you have no evidence. You're entitled to your opinion, I guess.
Opinion.
You've got no evidence. It's pure speculation on your part. There are certain points of agreement here, but I don't, as far as hammering me on how a voluntary society would function, I don't think you've done that. But hey, call them to another broadcast. I'm happy to have you on again.
Well, I devote some time to it. I'd love to hear just you go uninterrupted by me. I'd love to hear you tell us what it's going to be like afterwards.
Sure.
Instead of telling us how it's not going to be and how everything's wrong with everything, tell us what it's going to be like once we come around to your way of thinking.
And a lot of times when we have pre-recorded shows and we're not taking callers, that's what we do. And if you go back far enough in the archives, you'll see that's all we used to talk about. And I'll be a little personal. I'll get a little I didn't want to be pigeonholed to be only doing traffic tickets. Where you're wrong about it's just I talk about taxes a lot, but we talk mainly on the show. If you look, all the success stories 9 times out of 10 are traffic. So call the show again and we can discuss it. But you can't fault me for the type of calls that are coming in and doing the show that way.
Not at all.
Okay. All right.
Well, one other thing I want to just ask before you go. Why is it that you blocked me from the net, from your site? Because I was crushing all your little minions with just blasting their comments and making a mockery of your entire way of thinking. And all of a sudden, I'm blocked, and comments are now screened. Tell your audience about that as well.
Well, I already did. I've already discussed you. I've even got videos about, where we, discussing you. You and what's his name got banned because you continually lie about me. Now, you didn't. I called you out on him here on the air, but you and especially that one guy. What's his name? The lawyer, Juan Gall. He lied. So, I gave him an opportunity to either be truthful with your comments or we block you. But I've been lazy on the forum, and I need to block Wes Serra, too, because he's a habitual liar. So, but, hey, you were on the show. We had more than an hour now. So, but you're free to call again.
Okay. All right. Have a good holiday.
All right. You, too. I had ICBM on for an hour, 4 segments. So, no one can say, well, I don't agree with his saying that opinions can't be proven. If someone has the opinion that I don't, allow dissent on my show, that opinion is just dead wrong, as we now have more evidence. I think that's 4 complete hours that ICBM has been on the broadcast. So if someone else disagrees, if you think I'm a scammer, you think, bring the evidence. But at least he was decent enough to admit that he was speculating that I'm acting and that I'm scheming. So, but I want to bring up on the show Mr. Black with the time that we have left. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Black.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I really like your show. What was the guy that the last caller's name?
I don't know his name, but he goes by the handle of ICBM Catcher.
Well, one of the things I did want to speak upon is, like, how does someone think that because somebody's bigger and stronger than you, they're entitled to your labor? Or if a man walks down the street, he sees a woman that he's interested in, he can just, have his way with her because he's able to force his way onto it. I do think the system is very corrupt, but are there good laws in place as far as, like, not having kids work in factories, child abuse, men beating on women, stopping legitimate murders, not where, the police say you do something and, you have the executive branch being the police and the prosecutors, locking people up without a victim or taking your property or being your house or your money, without a victim. I just think it's just very corrupt. But there are some, good laws, I believe, in place, and the laws in place are the ones where, as you say, do no harm. And as far as what he was saying is that what laws apply, and like, even in all the rules and stuff like, rules and even the laws, it's all basically been annotated by, I don't know, these senior citizens where they're saying, you have to be, privately and personally injured. That is the law that most people can agree on, whether whether you're rich or poor, and the fact that someone can come along and somebody's elderly and just take their money because you're able to do so because you're stronger and you're taking advantage of people. So that's my thought on basically what you two guys are going back and forth with. And I think you have a very good show where you open people's eyes. So that's my opinion on that.
I'm glad to hear that. He does contradict himself a lot. He accused me off air of equivocating, and he's going to have to come on the show again, and he's going to have to give me specific examples of where I'm equivocating. I didn't think so. If anything, I'm very precise with the words that I use. Yeah, and he thinks it's okay that he makes an appeal to tradition. Well, everyone knows that's the way it is. It's always been done this way. It's been done this way since time and it's just a way of justifying a criminal organization. He agrees that it's immoral to force strangers to give you money. There's no reason to go beyond that. It doesn't matter if you're doing something good, because you can say that, well, the Mano Negra, they're in Palermo, they do provide a service. No, forcing people to give you money makes you a criminal. It doesn't matter if you turn around and use their money for some benevolent purpose. You're still committing a criminal act. And I'm glad he at least stated that anarchy in principle, in theory, is not nonsense. He just wants to make an appeal to, I forget the logical I guess, to, I can't think of the word, it hasn't happened before. If it could happen, it would have happened already. And there are historical examples, and yes, they're small, but that's what it's going to take. That's how social change happens. It happens on a smaller scale, and then the bandwagon effect takes over. Let me
ask you this, Mark.
Sure.
Let me ask you this here. In my viewpoint, I think one of the best societies I do see here in America is basically like the Amish. I think, they have a society their society is way better than, the society that we live in, where they basically don't bother people. They don't extort nobody. They stay to themselves.
Well, they're not as great as their treatment of women is pretty bad. So, but
from what I'm saying, what I'm saying as far as you could always pick up some really bad issues, how they treat women. But I think as far as being conquering other people, I don't even think the Amish ever, dealt with any slaves or, took anything off of Indians or anything of that nature. I don't think they have a history of that. And I think the last time we had a murder might have been, I think in 200 years, maybe 3 or 4 murders or something like that. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a very peaceful society. Yes, absolutely.
As far as dealing with being peaceful and respecting with other people's property, I don't know. I think the reason why America is the way it is right now is that the general public is so incredibly incompetent, And like I said, a lot of times it's not even prosecutors will put, in front of a jury, and a jury can only make a decision based on how competent they are. A lot of times, they'll tell you, well, you can't speak if you're not an attorney, but you can be a juror and decide whether or not somebody goes to jail or not, and you're and most people who are jurors are really, a lot of times it's a bunch of older people. But if you don't vote, you don't get to be a juror, And I just think the whole system's really corrupt. Can you get a remedy in there? Yeah, you can, but for the most part, you have a group of criminals, like you're saying, that really control everything. And it's basically the Bar Association. They write the laws. They have the executive branch enforce the law. The executive branch brings people in their courtroom. The attorneys are bar card members. The judge is bar card member. Prosecutors are bar card member. So, if no one can see that the Bar Association, which is no part of the government, neither branch, they basically took over the government. Because people can't see that. I mean, do you see that?
Well, I see that. It's and most legislators and lawyers and most, a lot of executive branch. I get that. I think people are complacent. And I think it's because you have this, and it was an appeal to futility, which is what I couldn't think of before. People just like most people probably like ICBM catcher in that it's like, what can I do? This is the way it is. It's always going to be this way. Why should I do anything to change it? And so even if they understand, I mean, I get how some people don't want to get out of their comfort zone. Not everybody wants to be an activist. Most people don't want to discuss this. I mean, the amount of hate that you get when you're an anarchist or an anarchist vegan, It's like going back to high school. How many times I'm being called a faggot? Yeah,
Are you a vegan?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I tell you what. I eat meat, but if I had to do the dirty work myself and murder animals, I wouldn't do it. Would I eat their byproducts like cheese and probably milk or something like that? Yeah, but as far as like killing animals, I like the taste of meat, but
okay, we're up against the break, so hold on. We'll be back here on the No State Project in just a moment. And like Mr. Black is saying, it does your taste trump ethics?
Hello?
Yeah, welcome back. The whole thing about veganism. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay then.
Yeah, you're back.
Well, I wanted to ask you before we go too quick. Who exactly does, from your knowledge, who exactly is the IRS collecting for?
They're collecting for the United States government. I don't buy into this that they're collecting for where it goes from there. But ostensibly it's for the United States government and for its operations. Which, yes, I know a lot goes back to the Fed.
Well, from what it's saying is, like, if you do read the code, they're supposed to be collecting for the Treasury.
Yeah, the Treasury of the United States government.
Okay, but if there's no Treasury since 1921, it's like, who are they collecting for?
You really think there's no Treasury since 1921? I mean, there are people that are cashing Social Security checks that are it's in the name of the United States Treasury. So.
Okay, 1921. You could probably read. I might just email it over. It's telling you that there is no Treasury, right? And if they're collecting for a Treasury, the Treasury, what exactly did the Treasury give you? You can only owe somebody unless they gave you something or you're liable for something. It's either one or the other. So you're not liable to the Treasury. The Treasury never gave you anything.
Well, they're the collection agent or department for the United States government. The claim is that they are protecting you. That just being physically here, they're protecting you, which is, of course, nonsense by their own laws. So I wanted to just get back to this issue of veganism because I started on an issue that has a lot of hate, and boy, more so than that, the veganism. Why is it that you're against killing the animal yourself?
Everybody has a right to live. Just because I'm bigger and stronger, I can do it and I can impose my will on them, doesn't make it right. Okay. And that's how I live my life. Like, I really don't step on bugs. For the most part, if I can catch them and put them outside, I'd rather do that.
Okay, so wouldn't it be logically consistent?
Your life more significant.
Great. Well, wouldn't it be logically consistent then to not pay somebody to do what you're not morally able to do yourself?
You're 100% correct. It's something that I need to work on. Period. And it's like, I know when something's wrong. And the thing about people, they try to justify their reasoning for their ill will to somebody else, or that they have a right to impose the will on somebody else. It's not right. Even if it's my brother or some family member they're doing wrong. You never can tell when somebody's doing something wrong, including your kids. Yes. We have a lot of things where I have a right to do what I'm doing, for the better good of something else. It's crazy. It's completely crazy.
But what is stopping you right now from being consistent with your own moral principle and stopping today and never buying or eating animal products again?
I think it's just being weak and not enough willpower, because I like sugar too. And sugar, the more sugar I eat, the more weight I gain. It's just, you have to just knuckle down and just get in your head that I shouldn't do this no more. No, whether it's a person smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, smoking crack, doing opioids. Opioids are a little more different because you just can't quit without getting sick. But, it's something that's detrimental. It's just getting willpower and not doing it. And I just think people are just weaker, and they're comfortable with, their, for their wrongdoing. I think they're just comfortable with it, and they don't want to try.
Well, do you want to try?
The fact that What'd you say?
Do you want to try? Try today to stop eating animals.
Okay. Is sugar too?
Well, hey, I'll tell you this.
I never indulged in tobacco or liquor or drugs. I never even got into it. So I don't have that habit. So for me to see how someone does it, I don't understand it because it was never a habit that I had. So, but I do like food and I do like sugar. I love pastries and stuff like that there, but it makes me heavier. The heavier you get, your blood pressure, your sugar, your cholesterol. It's just really not good for you. But,
well,
I think Americans are gluttonous for punishment, though. I just think we have bad habits that we're comfortable with.
Well, from a health standpoint, you will lower your risk for all-cause mortality by not eating animals. But so give it a shot. Hey, Oreos, the original Oreo is vegan. So that you can keep that in mind. But anything that you can look, I don't have much time for this, but I make a vegan stew. I make my own seitan. I've got it really good now. It's a good meat, a wheat meat or a meat substitute, and it's got more protein per ounce or gram than beef. It has no fat, no cholesterol. Nobody has to die needlessly, and so you can use that, and you can even buy it. You don't have to make it yourself. So you can have these meat substitutes as you ease into it. Because I can guarantee one of the first things that's going to happen is you're going to normalize, because most Americans, from what I've read, and it may not be true, are chronically constipated. Vegans aren't. So by getting more actual fiber into your diet, you're going to be regular. And aside from the health benefits, and you'll probably have a lot of weight loss. But all these things can be, you can get vegan. Oh, man, tofurkey is some good stuff. You don't have to, but you can meet all your nutrition needs with plants. I powerlift and Olympic lift and do gymnastics. I'm not saying I'm going to step on a competitive stage, tomorrow, but I can hold my own. I mean, I can.
Let me ask you this real quick, Mark. Do vegans live longer than people who are herbivores and carnivores? Do they live longer?
Herbivores, people who are. I mean, we are herbivores. We are not omnivores. We are herbivores. Yes, vegans do have a longer lifespan. The group with the longest lifespan in the United States are the Seventh-day Adventists, because they're predominantly vegan, and that is those are studies that have been done on thousands of people over decades.
How long do they live? What's their life expectancy? Because it's supposed to be at 72 or 74, the average life expectancy.
Well, they have the highest, so it's probably about 78.
So it's 4 years. But it's 4 years, really? I thought it was.
I'm just throwing the number out because I know what the average American is. I don't remember what the life expectancy for a Seventh-day Adventist is. But given the fact that they have vegans as a group have the lowest risk for all-cause mortality, I would expect that their life expectancy would be much higher. And as a group, the Seventh-day Adventists seem to prove that. Now, the Okinawans, who used to be predominantly vegan, they were a population with the highest number of people, over 100. So, but they've been adopting a Western diet, and it's causing also the same thing with that they're getting the same afflictions that Americans and Western Europeans get because of the diet. So you know.
Well, you're right about that. My father said a lady was almost 100, and she was carrying water, back and forth. She was from Okinawa. He said that. So, but I think Asians live longer than anybody, but they eat more vegetables than they do meat. So
that's true.
What I'm trying to do.
So try it today and contact me off air or by email, and I can send you some links that can help you out. But I will be perfectly frank with you. It does really help if you like to cook. You don't have to, but you can spend a little more money on meat substitutes. But if you're eating predominantly, plants, that's not going to cost you a lot of money. I've got a stew that I made the other day that is fantastic. But all I do is I chop everything up. I put it in the crock pot. I make my seitan, let it simmer for a few hours. You can't even tell I could give that stew to a hardcore carnist, or they think they're a carnivore, and they wouldn't even know the difference. I've made seitan fried chicken, if you will, and my daughter's friends at school didn't even know that it wasn't meat. Of course, she asked them ahead of time if they had a gluten intolerance because she didn't want to send them to the hospital. So, hey, we're completely out of time. I appreciate the call, though, but stay in touch with me and let me know how it goes.
Thanks, Mark.
I appreciate it. My name is Marc Stevens. You've been listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network. I will be live on Wednesday, so till then, salud.